want to tell you a story. This is a story about a Welshman from Gwent, a king from the 6th century, and his name was King Tewdric, or Tewdric. It's been different pronunciations. And King Tewdric is a fascinating figure, one of the old kings in Wales, and it's part history, part legend, part myth, and everything I love about Welsh history. So I'm in the lovely Chepstow woods at the moment. More importantly though, King Tewdric to me says a lot about honour, age, burnout, duty, those type of stuff. And when I was learning about King Tewdric, it taught me a lot about how we live in the modern world and in the modern age. So I thought I'd do a little video. Here in the lovely part of Gwent, to tell you the story of King Tewdric and how I sort of related to it. So picture this, it's 6th century Wales, post-Roman, pre-Norman. And this area of Gwent, oh lovely, look at that. And this area of Gwent had the Saxons banging on the door every 5 minutes. It was a brutal period in history. And King Tewdric was constantly fighting to keep his kingdom. Now imagine the stress that you're under as king, as the one in charge. It can do a lot to a man. Now Tewdric is king in this very part of Gwent, and he spends years doing what kings do: fighting, defending a patch. And all of a sudden Tewdric gets sick of it. He just don't want to do it no more. And I can imagine how exhausting it would be, constantly defending a land against the Saxons, constantly dealing with the stress of what a king has to deal with back then. It was a brutal time. So do you know what he does? He just says, I'm done. That's it for me, lads. I'm out of here. Gone. Too many battles. Too much death. Too much being a warrior king, like the legend that he's gained for himself. So he does something that kings almost never do. He retires. That's it. packs things up and he's gone. Old King Tewdric. Look at that. He hands the crown down to his son, Mathern, and he disappears. He disappears to live in the woods near Tynton. Now would be woods very similar to these woods. I'm in Chepstow woods at the moment, but very similar. Now imagine a king with all the responsibility, a feared king. He was feared for being excellent in battle. He gives it all up to live in a place like this, in a little hut, in woods very close and very similar to these. All the honours, all the legend, and he says no more. So he spends his days living in these woods like a hermit. He's found God, and this brings him closer to God, and that's how he wants to live his life. Done with the duties and responsibilities, and now he wants to live like a holy man in these woods, and I'm starting to see why. I can see the appeal. Now that's where when I was reading the story, related, because to me that sounds like burnout. He had all the responsibility in the world, constant invasion from the Saxons, constantly having to protect his people, his kingdom, his family, constant battles. And he found God and thought, I can't do this no more. I'm done with it. I'm burnt out. And we've all felt like that, haven't we, at some point? Maybe not to the extremes of having to defend the kingdom of Gwent, but when you just can't deal with life's responsibilities anymore, and you just want to go and live in the woods, or you want to take a gap year in Asia, or whatever really, but you just can't log on and send those emails, or whatever it is you do. You're just burnt out. And it might be a false comparison compared to life in the 6th century. Of course it is, but the meaning behind it is the same. Sometimes we just run away and live amongst all this. And I think a lot of us who have ever just sort of experienced burnout can relate. You don't want it no more. You can't do it no more, but something calls you. You're always called back into it. And it's something that I've experienced myself when I felt a bit burnt out. You just need to go away from it and just not deal with it. As a musician, I felt it a lot of times where people have expected things from you all the time, and you've got commitments, you've got to do this, you've got to You know, you've got to be in that zone, and sometimes you just don't want it no more, and you've got to not do it for a while. And as heroic as that is for me, I don't think it's quite on the same level as King Tewdric defending against a Saxon horde. But it's the part of the story that I've sort of related to and trying to think on as I walk this beautiful part of Gwent. But then the world doesn't let us stay gone for long. The world, it comes knocking again. Because the Saxons invade again. Now, King Tewdric gets word that there's a Saxon army coming and it's amassing. And they come storming into Gwent, smashing things up and trying to overrun the place. And young Tewdric, he's struggling. It's a tough gig. And the people of Gwent, they say, do you know what we need? We need Tewdric back. And so they go into the hermit's hut and they try and find it. It would have been somewhere similar to this. And there they see old King Tewdric. So they find the hermit's hut and they knock on the door, and imagine this is King Tewdric, old and grey, probably praying to God, wearing a cloak, and he's happy. And they say, look, we need to talk to you. We need you. Gwent needs you. Just one more battle. And do you know what King Tewdric says? He says yes. So Tewdric returns, and he's old now, white-haired, but he puts his armour back on for the men of Gwent, and he takes up his sword again. And imagine that, the silver-haired hermit who's been living up in the woods alone with God. He walks back to lead out the army of Gwent against the invading Saxons, and he goes into battle. Some say in Tintern, some say where I am now, in Pontyseison. Now I looked up online where this battle was, and some website said it was actually in the village of Tintern, round about Tintern. Others said it's where I am now, in a lovely little place called Pontyseison. And as you can see, right by the river, and it makes sense, obviously because of the name Pont, bridge, Seison, Saxon, so this is potentially where they met. The silver-haired hermit walking out to lead the army against the Saxons, and he goes into battle either here or at Tintern. As I said, I'm not sure, I can't work out where, but side by side with his people, the people that he left behind to become a hermit, and he returned to protect in their time of need. So steel on steel, mud underfoot probably, the sound of men screaming, and right there in the thick of it all was the king, King Tewdric. And the Welsh win. They win the battle and drive the Saxons back. So this farm by here, I was just talking to the owner, or the owner's son actually, who lives up the road, and yeah, it's a crossing farm, and the reason why we're talking about the battle and why this probably is the place, Pont Bridge, Saxon, but this farm is called Cross Inn, and the road was going up with a no car sign, is, he was telling me, is the remains of an old Roman road which head to Chepstow. So you follow that path, it goes into the woods, and he was saying it picks up a path and you can see the old flooring on the Roman road. So a lot of history in this little place, Pontyseison. And when I was talking to the guy, he was telling me marked on calendars April the 1st, Tewdric's feast. And I don't know much about that, I don't know anything about it actually, but the son Leroy told me that when they moved here into the farm there, they found out about the day, April the 1st, a marking on calendars, and they celebrate it. They still do that. April the 1st, they all come round, they all bring plates of food, they all bring their bits, and they all have a feast to this day. So it's lovely to see that history is still alive and those traditions are still alive, and I couldn't think of anything better myself. But Tewdric takes a mortal wound and he's dying. Now, some reports I've heard is they weren't even a battle. The mere sight of Tewdric was enough for the Saxons to say, no, we don't want no part of that. And as they were sort of retreating, a rock was hurled and it hits Tewdric in the head. That's one report. The other was that there was a battle and Tewdric led him to victory, but yeah, he takes a mortal wound and he's dying, and he's carried from the battlefield, and he wanted to be buried at what is Flatholm, the island between in the River Severn. But on the way his wounds get the better of him and he stops here in this little village called Mathern, and they take in water from the spring, and that spring becomes holy the moment the water touches his lips. But Tewdric, he dies right here, and they bury him. And they bury him on the spot, and the locals make him a saint. Saint Tewdric, the hermit warrior, the reluctant king. And here, where he died, they built a church. So yeah, that's it. That's King Tewdric. Tewdric was old. They thought his time had been and gone, and he was done. But when the chips were down, he still had something to give. And yeah, that's the story of Tewdric, and that proves that one man can come back and turn the tide of a war. So King Tewdric was a Celtic king of Gwent, and a history of success in battle. He abdicated to his son Meurig in order to live a hermit's life at Tintern. It is said that Tewdric had a dream he would be successful in battle, but he would be mortally wounded. A vehicle pulled by two stags would take him towards Ynys Echni, Flatholm Island in the River Severn, and he would die on the journey. 3 days later, wherever the stag stopped, springs would gush and his wounds would be bathed. As the prophecy foretold, the Saxons were defeated at the Battle of Pontyseison near Tintern, but Tewdric was mortally wounded by a blow to the head. He was taken on a journey to Flatholm, but near where Mathern now stands, he took a turn for the worst. The place he died is just in front of us, on the site of Mathern Church. Tewdric's son Mathern built the church on the spot of Tewdric's death and buried his father's body there. It is believed that Mathern was crowned a king on the death of his father. St. Tewdric's well. As Tewdric lay dying, he asked his body be laid to rest on the Isle of Echni, Flatholm, in the Severn Sea. But as servants were tending him, 2 white stags pulling a wagon appeared from the woods. His grieving comrades laid him on the wagon and began a slow journey to the banks of Severn. Nearing their goal, the solemn procession paused to rest. Suddenly, close by, a jet of clear sparkling water gushed from the ground, and as it did so, the stags in the wagon vanished. Tewdric's companions used the water to bathe his wounds, but to no avail, and it was here that he died. Tewdric's wish was to be buried on Flatholm, but apparently not fulfilled. In the early 1600s, a stone coffin containing a skeleton showing a dreadful skull wound was unearthed nearby. When Mathern Church, dedicated to St. Tewdric, was restored in 1881, the coffin and bones were interred there. The stone coffin lid can still be seen in the nave. The stream of pure water still runs today. It is here before you. It's been known as St. Tewdric's well ever since these events. So yeah, I'm here now at St. Tewdric's well, and yeah, this is the place. I mean, this story sort of reminds me that sometimes your worst self is your best self for King Tewdric. He tried to be holy, but he got called back into being a warrior again. And sometimes you try and take the righteous path, but that's just who he was. Maybe God put him here to defend his patch and to live on in legend, and to have people like me hunt him down and find where he died all these centuries later. And that's King Tewdric. That's why I love the story of King Tewdric. And it's not just about the king who fought the Saxons. It's about duty, it's about burnout, solitude, aging, heroics, and ultimately death. And 15 centuries later, I start trying to find the balance of being a hermit and being a warrior. And the story of a king who gave up his power for peace, but returned when his people needed him most. King Tewdric.